Welcome to the LSU Sports Insider Podcast, brought to you by the journalists at The Advocate, NOLA.com, and the Times-Picayune. I'm Perryn Keys, joined today by Wilson Alexander, our lead LSU football beat writer, and by Scott Rabalais, our venerable longtime columnist. These two gentlemen are rubbing their eyes and having tried to catch up on some sleep here after having been in New York for most of the weekend, having seen and covered firsthand Jayden Daniels' win of the Heisman Trophy. He is now the third LSU player to have ever won the Heisman Trophy and the second in 5 years. Isn't that something else, gentlemen?
It's still kind of surreal and unbelievable, especially at a position, the quarterback position that, as we talked about last week a couple times at LSU, was just, what's the right word? I don't want to be too harsh about it, but just not productive enough for a very long time. And now you've got two Heisman winners. It's incredible, really.
It means a lot for Jayden Daniels personally, but to the program as well. And to now be on a different level as far as their quarterback play going forward, it's quite a legacy that leaves for him. Speaking of programs, you're probably a little lucky we're here today. Because yesterday morning we were at New York Airport catching our early morning flight back to New Orleans, and the gate to our right was a flight going to London, and the gate to our left was a flight going to Honolulu. So Wilson and I had some hard choices to make.
I don't know what happened. We just wound up in Hawaii.
I'm so sorry, Penn. We're in London today.
I'll be sitting here by myself, running my mouth on the phone, to the detriment of all of our listeners and viewers. So we will, of course, in the episodes to come, we will discuss the transfer portal. We will discuss potential coaching changes, as there have not been any yet, and obviously bowl preparation for LSU and Wisconsin, who get it on in Tampa on January 1st. But this episode is going to be pretty much all Jayden all the time. It's not often, obviously, that somebody wins the Heisman Trophy. It's only happened 3 times here in Louisiana. And of course, LSU went 60 years without one. So that's going to be the topic du jour today, and we're going to go Jayden Daniels wall to wall. Obviously, today's episode is brought to you by Champion Wealth Strategies. They are here for us every Monday and Thursday with every episode. Champion Wealth Strategies is a national financial services firm specializing in the capital markets, securities, insurance, 401ks, and college and retirement planning. Our broker-dealer is LPL, financial member FINRA SIPC. As you know, investments are not FDIC insured, may lose value, and have no bank guarantee. Contact Champion Wealth Strategies and plan like a champion today. You do that at championwealthstrategies.com. We're here every Monday and Thursday live on our YouTube channel, specifically the YouTube channel LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. If you don't catch us live there, you can catch us after the fact, as well as all our other social channels. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever other finer podcasts are found. And if you haven't already, subscribe to The Advocate. Of course, we're here all day and every day, whether it's a digital edition, a print edition. Stay up to date with all the latest and greatest LSU news. You do that at theadvocate.com/subscribe and get a hold of our LSU newsletter. To do that, it's a daily newsletter. To do that, stay up to date with everything, get the news delivered straight to your inbox. You go to theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. And one more thing, obviously it's gift-giving season, it's holiday season, and as we promised on several other podcasts before the Heisman Trophy ceremony, we suspected that we might have another poster page for all our fine readers and for all our fine consumers. And this to my left here, this page will be available. It is available already in addition to the actual Heisman win, the poster page from the front page from the Advocate Sports section the day after Jayden Daniels' Heisman win. Let's see if Wilson's got it here, and he does.
This one's a little bit wrinkled, but...
Well, I mean, that means somebody actually consumed our news.
But you actually buy a poster version of this, it will not be. And so there you go, that Heisman.
That's correct.
That Heisman.
Those are both available at the Advocate store to go on ahead and order your prints. You go to store.theadvocate.com. Again, that's store.theadvocate.com. And for now, if you enter the coupon code INSIDER, INSIDER, you get 15% off your purchase. So that's a lovely gift for the LSU fan in your life, just as the holidays are here and approaching. So, gentlemen, we thought this was going to happen. We weren't sure. It wasn't going to be a runaway. It wasn't going to be a landslide the same way that it was in 2019 when Joe Burrow won it. Largest margin of victory ever. But Jayden did bring it home. And he did bring it home, not by he didn't cruise. It wasn't an overwhelming margin, but it was a comfortable margin. And so I'll just, Wilson, I'll turn this over to you first and just I'll sort of let you reflect on whatever you'd like to reflect about the weekend itself.
Oh gosh, that is so broad and open-ended. Can you give me a hint?
Well, let's start with the voting itself. Jayden Daniels with 2,209 points. Michael Penix with 1,701 points. So he basically wins by about 300 points. I suppose there was a little bit of palace intrigue after the college football awards show on Friday night. Jayden Daniels wins the Walter Camp. He wins the Davey O'Brien for the best quarterback, but he didn't win the Maxwell Award, which is not always indicative of the Heisman Trophy race. But a lot of times those who win the Maxwell win the Heisman, and he didn't win he didn't win the Maxwell. The Maxwell went to Michael Penix, so there was at least a little bit of intrigue going into Saturday night's ceremony.
Yeah, there was. It's interesting because, like you said, there's sometimes these. Rab compared it to the Golden Globes and the Oscars.
Yeah.
Like there's almost like these precursor awards. Another one that often is indicative is the AP Player of the Year, and Jayden had won that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it doesn't always match up, like you said, but it often does. And so it's like, okay, well, the AP Player of the Year usually matches up. So does the Maxwell. So one of these is not going to be not going to be the actual indicator this year. And obviously, Jayden winning AP Player of the Year ends up being the indicator that he was going to win the Heisman. And so, like you said, it was a comfortable enough margin. It wasn't like Mark Ingram and Toby Gerhart or anything like that in 2009. But yeah, certainly a little bit closer. And I'd be fascinated to. I think that if Bo Nix and Oregon had won the Pac-12 championship, this would be a much different story. Jayden might not have even won.
Correct.
But it seemed to me, and this is just a hunch because we don't know exactly when any ballots are submitted or anything like that, but oftentimes it seems like Heisman ballots gets maybe submitted a little bit too early because they opens up the Monday after the regular season, goes through the Monday after championship weekend. Rabbit, is my timeline correct?
Yeah, it's 1 week.
Thank you. And and oftentimes it feels like people might be voting too early, but I think that Heisman voters this year did a good job of probably waiting until after the Pac-12 championship game, because otherwise I have a hard time seeing Michael Penix finishing second if you had voted before that game because of what Bo Nix had done statistically at that point, and Penix hadn't played great in some of the games down the stretch in the regular season. So that would be one takeaway. Is it seemed like people waited until after that Friday night Pac-12 championship game to submit their vote, and obviously Jayden ends up maybe as a result of Oregon losing, being able to comfortably win this by at least a somewhat comfortable margin.
Rab, you've got the results there in hand.
I hold in my hand the official Heisman ballot. So, in case anyone's wondering, when do we find out? We find out when everyone else did, and right after the announcement was made on TV, they handed out these packets in the press room, and then we looked at the voting. So that was so we're all in suspense until then.
So we'll go through the first place votes there, if you would, just very briefly.
503 for Jayden out of 800, 928 total potential votes. 503 first place votes for Jayden, 292 for Michael Penix, only 51 for Bo Nix. So I think that certainly illustrates Wilson's point that a lot of people made up their minds after that Pac-12 championship game on the Friday. Jayden at 217 second place votes, 86 third place votes. What was most interesting to me was that when they break down the voting by regions, there's 6 regions around the country with 145 media members in each one, plus the 57 living Heisman voters and the 1 fan vote. And Michael Penix won the 1 fan vote, by the way.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. He finished first in that. There you go to Heisman.com, and everyone, whoever gets the most points gets 1 first place vote. What was most interesting to me was that Jayden finished second in the far west to Penix, and
ahead of Bo Nix.
Ahead of Bo Nix. That was 327 for Michael Penix and 279 for Jayden, only 200 for Bo Nix. And that surprised me a little bit. I thought it was going to be a lot of people casting early votes, and it's going to be a very close race between Penix and Nix, and then Jayden would be third or maybe left off a lot of ballots. And that wasn't the case. He wasn't left off a lot of ballots at all. He was on 90.5% of the ballots which is the 7th most all time, which is really good. And to illustrate that point, well, you think, well, why isn't he on? Why won't he be on all of them? That never happens. Even Joe Burrow was not on every ballot. He was left off of 37 ballots in 2019 completely. So that was interesting. Jayden won 4 of the regions, by the way. The South, obviously, the Southwest, the Mid-Atlantic, and the Northeast. Michael Penix also won the Midwest, and but Jayden was second in that one too. So a strong across the board performance by Jayden.
It wasn't just 2 or 3 regions that sort of carried the day for him.
Which I thought it might be the case. Now his story, and I think you have to credit obviously his play, but I think you have to credit LSU's promoting of him as well. Yeah, they got the numbers out there, and you had a lot of things to work with, of course, but this showed broad support for Jayden Daniels across the country, and made it not one of the closest votes ever, like Wilson alluded to, but one of the closer votes, I would say. And so he needed that, and of course, as you said, with Bo Nixon won, it could be a very different story. I think it would have been even closer. Jayden still might have won, but it would have probably been even closer.
Wilson, we mentioned this at the top of the show, but just sort of have you go through Jayden's sort of whirlwind tour. You know, he wins AP Player of the Year, heads off to Baltimore before he goes to New York to pick up the Unitas Award, which is quite a nice little tour that he took, and quite a nice little haul that he came away with by the end of the week.
Jayden's going to need to build a trophy case now if he doesn't have one already. I mean, he's got a lot of hardware. He said the Heisman will be at his mom's house, and so maybe that's where they'll construct something as he embarks on finishes a college career that is extremely decorated, particularly this season, most of all, and then maybe an NFL career, and who knows what that brings. And so it wasn't quite the whirlwind tour that Joe Burrow had to go through because the ESPN College Football Awards show was not an in-person event. Right. So he didn't have to make an additional stop in Atlanta and then fly back up the East Coast, which probably made the week a little bit easier. But it was still a blur for him and his family. His parents flew out from Southern California to Baton Rouge on Wednesday morning, or I think it was Wednesday morning. And then they went up to, it was Wednesday morning, because then they went the next day to Baltimore for the Johnny Unitas. He had a tour with the folks at the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award, got to hold a Lombardi trophy, had a Johnny Unitas sort of replica jersey that he was able to wear, and then a ceremony that night that was a little over an hour long, and where he was presented that award. And then they flew the next morning to New York from Baltimore. So they got into New York on Friday morning, pretty darn early, because right as they got in to New York, and then had to pretty much drop their bags, and then they were whisked to Times Square to Raising Cane's. There was some NIL deals involved there with Todd Graves and the folks at Raising Cane's for Jayden, Michael Penix, and Bo Nix to film some commercials and TV spots and different things like that, all sorts of advertisements. And we were talking, I think Rab and I both had a different moment with Jayden's dad there, and he was saying, he's like, I don't know what day it is anymore, because to speak to how much of a whirlwind this was for them. And then same thing with Jayden. We were talking to him a few different times over the course of the weekend, and in one particular, before he won the Heisman Trophy, he has a press conference and another media availability. All 4 of them do, and his same sort of thing that he goes. He was asked what day he picked up his suit, and he's like, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I was like, is it blurry? He's like, hey, I don't know what day it is. And he was trying to kind of keep track of that, and it was interesting for him. I think Jayden to some degree enjoyed everything about the weekend. He's not really a reluctant sort of participant in these sorts of things, but he is very humble in it, and I think, and he wants to really just enjoy the whole thing. And I think that's really what he was trying to do. Every step of the moment was just, as he said, be where your feet are and sort of take it all in at every little step and enjoy it, because it will never happen again, obviously, for him. And it's something that is so memorable. And so that's kind of how the weekend went for him in a broad sense, in terms of sort of the blow by blow of his schedule, and there was lots of other events mixed in there, ceremony receptions with former Heisman winners, and a tour of the Lincoln Center that Saturday before they actually went there later for the event, and all sorts of things. And then Sunday he was still in New York. He came on back today with the Heisman in tow.
Am I mistaken in saying that that was his first trip to New York? Is that right?
It was his first trip to New York. Yeah, quite the introduction
He'll
to New
never
York
have
City.
another one
He said he'd never
one.
even really been on the East Coast. This was the first time he'd ever been to New York City. He was, asked what he thought about it. He's like, it's really busy.
Yeah, just like his life is about to be really busy if it's not already. Rab, what stood out to you about this weekend? You obviously were there in 2019 for the Joe Burrow presentation. Anything in particular that stands out about this weekend for Jayden Daniels?
I think the thing that stood out to me with him was his demeanor. I think dealing with all the Heisman activity and buzz and just this frenzy. New York's an intense place to begin with,
right?
And then you add a major event like this going on, and it's the holidays, and it's packed. Just people everywhere.
SantaCon on Saturday.
SantaCon.
I didn't know SantaCon was a thing, but
I didn't either. But apparently it was, and so but he handled it with the same kind of calm demeanor that I think you see on the football field. He's not a guy who is too excitable. He doesn't celebrate too much when something good happens. He certainly doesn't get too down when on the rare occasions when something goes bad. And like as Wilson said, we had a thing Friday morning at Raising Cane's in Times Square. We had a press conference with all the Heisman finalists on Friday. We had another press conference before and photo op before the ceremony Saturday. Then of course they brought him back Saturday night. Then Saturday after the press conference, they went into Times Square with the photo, and Wilson could speak to that, going out there and seeing that frenzy. And he just dealt with it all very well. Very prepared. We asked him, do you have a speech ready? Yes, he did. I mean, which didn't surprise me considering all we learned about Jayden in his time here about how he likes to prepare and he likes to spend a lot of extra time looking at film and that sort of thing. So it just struck me as how composed and prepared and his attention to detail. He was very interested in. He was very. Determined to have a certain look, his clothes and everything. The whole thing was. Someone asked him, if you wore a turtleneck for the Unitas thing, or you wore a turtleneck. He said, "No, I wasn't wearing the same thing two times in a row, 2 ceremonies in a row." So he thought about that too, and it all spoke to, I think, the kind of quarterback, the kind of person that made him a Heisman winner is his attention to detail.
This is the LSU Sports Insider, brought to you by the journalists at The Advocate, NOLA.com, and the Times-Picayune. You know where to find all our writers' great work. That's at theadvocate.com. And so to subscribe, to follow along, you go to theadvocate.com/subscribe to stay up to date on all the LSU football news, baseball, men's basketball, women's basketball, gymnastics, everything under the sun that they play out there at LSU. Stay up with everything. Get our LSU newsletter delivered straight to your inbox. To do that, you go to theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever other finer podcasts are found. And you can catch us live, obviously, on all our social channels, on our YouTube channel, specifically the LSU Tigers on NOLA.com channel. If you don't catch us live there, you can catch us later on at any time. We are brought to you every Monday and Thursday by Champion Wealth Strategies. Go to championwealthstrategies.com to find out more and plan like a champion today. And of course, as we say, get a hold of some of these posters, some of these fresh posters we've got coming for you in the Advocate store. That's at store.theadvocate.com and enter the coupon code INSIDER for 15% off your purchase. So, gentlemen, this is sort of the same topic, but sort of not, if that makes any sense. You obviously were there for the entire weekend to watch the ballyhoo and then the ceremony itself. Wilson, I ask you first, what's of all the moments of a very frantic weekend, what's the moment that will stand out to you most as you go down the road and later on?
The one that Rab mentioned about Times Square, and after Jayden had won the Heisman Trophy, done his press conference, I was able to trail him and the entourage that was with him in terms of his family and everybody from LSU and Brian Kelly into Times Square, and it was packed.
Yes,
it was. Oh my gosh! And it was interesting looking at the photo of Joe Burrow when LSU got a billboard for him in 2019. I wasn't there at that ceremony, so I can't speak to exactly what it was like around him as they went to take out that picture and everything. But there weren't as many people in the frame around Burrow. Jayden was surrounded.
Yeah.
It was funny to see. We walk out as we're walking out the Marriott Marquis there in Times Square where all this was happening. Steve Spurrier is coming in. He stops Jayden. He says, "Well deserved, well deserved." And then they all just kind of keep going out the building, and you're going past the little like pedicab things and hot dog carts and halal carts and all the bustle of Times Square that you can if you've not been to Times Square, whatever you think of when you think of Times Square, like this was to the max.
Yes.
That night in particular, it felt like just swarming with people. And luckily they had some security to kind of create a pathway. The Heisman Trophy was in a box being carted by it wasn't just out and about. It was like in a box being carted by the Heisman Trophy folks at that point. And then they got it out for Jayden to take pictures and then put it back in for it to be protected in the middle of all of that. And there were people who were like, "Who is that? What is going on? Is that Beyonce?" And I was like, a few times I was like, "It's the Heisman Trophy winner. It's Jayden Daniels." They're like, "What's that?"
Yeah.
Which is kind of like a reinforcement of this doesn't matter to everybody on the planet. But it was obviously not to subdue or take away from it at all. It was just sort of funny how there were some people who were like, did not know what was going on. But as Jayden arrives out there into Times Square, the billboard that LSU had purchased, the billboard that is apparently called the Beast. It is massive there in the middle of Times Square, and it's from 10 to 11 p.m. that night. It was just Jayden Daniels on this billboard, this video that LSU had made for him. And so he got to take pictures in front of that with his family, lifting up the trophy, with Coach Kelly. And then Jayden sort of took this moment to, right before they were about to walk out, he's got two phones. And he pulled out at least one of them and was just sort of like looking up, filming Snapchats or videos or whatever, and just sort of like rotating and just trying to take it all in. And that was probably the moment that's going to stick out to me the most, because that was kind of obviously lifting the trophy itself and being announced as the Heisman winner. That was like the moment where he was, you could say, like crowned. Yeah. But this was kind of I don't know, sort of the most visible celebration that you saw out there. It was away from sort of the sort of very structured ceremony, and it was nothing. I'll never forget seeing all of that unfold.
Kudos to our photographer, Michael Johnson, who was on the trip as well. He got out there and in the crowd got a great shot of Jayden next to Brian Kelly with his parents and with the big video board in the background, and of course the trophy. So he did a great job. But I'm struck by that. You're saying taking it all in, because Jayden's dad told me on Friday how they made a point to watch the Heisman ceremony every year when he was a kid growing up. And Jayden said some of his inspirations were Cam Newton winning and Lamar Jackson and Robert Griffin III. So, quarterbacks, he has some similarities too in terms of, being a dual threat and that sort of thing. So to have that moment come true for you after seeing those guys and imagining it, but it had, the reality had to far surpass his imagination. It must have been really amazing.
And also, it's not just the fact that their play style was similar, and this is something that really matters to Jayden, was the reason that those three in particular he pulled inspiration from was because they were black quarterbacks, and so was Jayden. And for him to, at that age, be able to see people doing what he wanted to do was huge. And especially Lamar for him was huge, because their play style, I think, he's really similar to Robert Griffin as well. Cam's so much more bigger and physical. But Lamar and Jayden, especially at that time of Jayden's life, like seeing, I think he would have been in high school at that point in 2016. And, being able to see Lamar, win in a style in which Jayden played as a black quarterback, that was huge for Jayden. And so he was asked, about maybe one of his favorite moments, or something that really stuck out to Jayden from the ceremony, was afterward being congratulated by Andre Ware, the first black quarterback to win the Heisman.
Yep.
And that was something that really stuck out to Jayden. And it took me back to a conversation I was able to have with Jayden in the preseason about a wide range of things, and asked him about legacy and what he kind of was hoping to do this year. And one of the things was he wanted to be able to inspire other black quarterbacks, younger ones. He mentioned Colin Hurley by name, a LSU commit. He mentioned Bryce Underwood, somebody else he's hoping to get, is guys who he hoped would be able to follow him at LSU. And and anybody else out there who was like him at one point, wondering if they could do it, being able to draw some inspiration from him, that was very significant for him in the course of the weekend.
So, Rab, you have been here covering LSU football for a long time now. This is a question. This is a question that we're not going to come to a final conclusion on today, because LSU is not going to come to a final conclusion on, I'm sure, for probably many years to come. Billy Cannon won the Heisman Trophy in 1959. Ultimately, much later, after some very big ups and some very big downs in the life of Billy Cannon, they put a statue outside of Tiger Stadium on the west side of on the west parking lot to honor him. And nobody has worn the jersey number 20. That's been officially retired. Right. It has not been retired for Joe. The number 9 has not been officially retired for Joe Burrow, but nobody has been issued the number 9 jersey since he left. We don't suspect that there will be a statue coming, next week or anything like that. But long story short, for these two gentlemen, but very specifically, since we're talking about Jayden Daniels right now, he just won. How should LSU honor Jayden Daniels?
There's two places that very visibly that football players at LSU get honored. One is the statue you mentioned of Billy Cannon, which is the only one for a football player, and then the other is the east facade of the stadium inside, where you have Billy Cannon's name up there, Jerry Stovall, who was the 1962 Heisman runner-up, and Tommy Casanova, who is LSU's only 3-time All-American. And clearly, Joe Burrow and Jayden Daniels' names need to go up there one day. And I would also say Glenn Dorsey, for sure, who has still won more awards than anyone else at LSU back in 2007. So, if you put up statues for, and not to belittle anyone else's accomplishments, you put up statues for Bob Pettit and Shaquille O'Neal and Simone Augustus and Pete Maravich, you got to put up one for Jayden, and you got to put up one for Joe Burrow, because frankly, LSU is a football school first and foremost, and there's nothing bigger, right? I mean, to win the Heisman Trophy,
sure.
and of course, two of those three players led LSU to national championships. So Jayden's legacy is going to be interesting, because Billy Cannon, first of all, these things grow over time, and Billy Cannon, not a lot of people saw Billy Cannon. Not every game was on television back then, right? And, the famous '59 game against Ole Miss, when he had the punt return, the 89-yard punt return on Halloween night, that wasn't televised.
Right.
People just heard about it on radio, or you saw it in person, or you saw the film of it later. And so it kind of made him grow into this even more mythic figure. And of course, Joe Burrow had the season of all seasons, at LSU with the national championship, perfect season, 15-0, wins by the biggest Heisman landslide. They beat all these ranked teams. And Jayden's a little different. And Jayden, I would say I felt sorry for him, but I was kind of touched by the fact that he said, he wished he could have led LSU to a championship, certainly at least an SEC championship. It's not because he didn't try, and not because he didn't do his very best.
Wasn't on his shoulders.
No, exactly. So, but those two players did win championships. Of course, Billy Cannon didn't win the Heisman the year LSU won the title. Joe Burrow did. So they're all a little different. But I certainly think his legacy will be remembered as someone who did just a singular talent, just the ultimate dual threat, quarterback at LSU, to throw for 3,500 yards plus and rush for over 1,000 yards. But yeah, I think Florida has a setup outside Ben Hill Griffin Stadium of their 3 Heisman winning quarterbacks, Tebow and Steve Spurrier and Danny Werfel, who was also there. Saturday night. We heard from him. They presented the Danny Werfel Award to Ladd McConkey from Georgia, and it was it's a nice setup, and I think LSU could, maybe you don't want to mimic what Florida did, but it could emulate that somehow and have them together. And who knows if they could have someone else win it in a few years. You never know. It's such a hard thing to grasp.
Might be 60 years. Might be 60 more years until, and that's why it's really worth remembering this and honoring this, as it is.
Like you said, there's these schools out there, big football schools, who've never had a Heisman winner. You were mentioning Tennessee has never had a Heisman winner, and I mean Alabama went a very long time before it had a Heisman winner, and now it's got a handful of them, but it doesn't come around all the time. LSU's got a good setup right there, like you're saying, right where Billy Cannon's statue is. I think you could probably just sort of put them kind of in somewhat of a row, spaced out, of course, but him Burrow Daniels and some kind of order there. And like you said, with the jersey retirement, here just a reminder of like what has to be done to be eligible for that. Here's a very general thing on LSU's website. And 5 years must have passed prior to being nominated for it. But it mentions how, truly unusual and outstanding accomplishments, et cetera, such as winning of a Heisman Trophy or National Player of the Year award. So, I mean, I think that Jayden has certainly met that kind of requirement, having done that. It'll be a while before any of that were to happen, because obviously, like you said, we haven't seen Burrow's number formally retired, and that would happen certainly first decade. Actually, well, hang on now. 5 years will be next year.
Yeah, that's right.
So it could be coming up somewhat soon here. I can't imagine LSU is going to waste any time, honoring, doing everything it can to honor him. But like you said, how they haven't given number 9 to anybody else since then. I'll be surprised if LSU if somebody's wearing number 5 next year.
We've probably seen number 5 for the last time.
Yeah, and it might not be a formal thing now for a little while, but it's actually quite convenient because LaTerrence Welch was the corner. He transferred out. He ended up at Arizona State already, actually. Going back to Jayden Daniels old school, but he was the one on defense who wore number 5 this year. So nobody else on the team has the number right now, and there's really no reason for anybody else on the team to have the number again. When you win the Heisman Trophy, regardless of whether or not you won a team championship, that should be something that is honored in a way that is, with a jersey retirement and probably a statue as well.
The number 5 has been worn by some other interesting quarterbacks in LSU history. If we have some older time people, LSU fans watching this, they might remember Mike Miley in the early 1970s, who was a runner, thrower. He was known for his scrambling ability, somewhat in the Jayden Daniels fashion. Steve Ensminger wore number 5 at LSU when he played in the late 1970s, and then Jeff Wickersham wore number 5 as well when he played in the 80s. So, but
with all due respect to those 3 gentlemen, they don't quite measure up.
No. I'm saying you're not. You wouldn't be sliding anybody else if no one else got to wear number 5. It's a difficult thing in college football. You have to be very judicious about it because you have such a huge roster, and you need numbers. And you have a lot of times already with LSU or a lot of college teams where somebody's wearing the same number on offense and then on defense. And in the NFL, you're talking about 53 guys, so you can retire a bunch of numbers. But I think they both deserve to have 9 and 5 taken off the list for that players can wear, because as we said, it doesn't happen very often, and you don't know when it'll happen again.
Rab, you did the whole list of 1 through 99, like who was the best LSU player to wear every number. Who was number 5 before Jayden?
Skylar Green was in our book was the best number 5. Yeah, okay. He was an All-American receiver, kick returner on that 2003 team. Also Darius Geis wore number 5, but he's stricken from the record book right now at LSU, so I don't think there's going to be any question there. But I hope they all get their just due. Like I said, there was a long time to honor Billy Cannon. I mean, 6 decades really, and his legend just grew and grew and grew. And this is so much more recent. These things take time. It does. I mean, you want it to be a thoughtful process. And I don't want people to think I'm talking out of 2 sides of my mouth, because I've written in the wake of the whole Dale Brown, Sue Gunter court saga that maybe LSU needs to tap the brakes on all these kind of things. But clearly, if you're going to have statues on campus, you got Skip Bertman statue, Billy Cannon, the 4 basketball players, all very deserving, but this is the top of the charts as far as LSU sports goes, and they deserve to have the same honors as well.
And a major just key difference between the court naming and all that, it's like with the jersey retirement in particular and the statue stuff as well, like there's like I was just reading it from the LSU's website, there's like a criteria, and there's like a very clear like requirements that must be met in order to get there. Like LSU will probably also consider retiring number 3 in baseball for Dylan Cruz. There are certain things, like you said, it's a National Player of the Year award, something like that makes you sort of eligible for to have a jersey number retired. It's a little bit more clear cut based on their own eligibilities to have a number retired.
19 is retired in baseball for Ben McDonald, is it not? And Robbie Smith, is it? Am I getting that right?
That's correct. And Skip Bertman wore 20.
15.
I'm sorry. 15. Yeah, I don't know what. Alex Bucks wore 20 actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, we played baseball and
Todd
football.
Walker wore 20?
Todd Walker wore number 12.
12. I'm getting twos
And,
mixed up. Gosh, we're
Wally
butchering
Pontiff.
this right now.
Wally Pontiff, I assume they've retired number 31 for Wally Pontiff, the late Wally Pontiff. They certainly have his number up there.
Yeah, I see it up there.
Well, there's one other thing that we ought to.
Well, 20 was Paul Skeens, so maybe that will get retired as well.
Oh, well, it certainly could. It certainly could. He's a worthy candidate as well. One other thing, and this is sort of, I hesitate to bring up this topic because it sounds like we're going to slight one over the other or something like that, or slight one in favor of the other. But we did bring up this topic, or we're going to bring up this topic, which is, where does Jayden Daniels rank all time among LSU football players? I'm going to guess that the overwhelming majority of folks would say Joe Burrow number one, but and of course Billy Cannon, as you said, he's had 70 years or thereabouts to have his sort of legend grow, in the minds of LSU football fans. So, Brad, where does he stand? Where does Jayden Daniels stand?
Well, it's the top shelf, isn't it? I mean,
Yes. He's been very select company.
Those three, but you can't, like I said, you can't dismiss someone like Tommy Casanova as well. Being a three-time All-American, played defense, also played a little bit of running back, returned punts. He returned 2 punts for touchdowns in the 1970 Ole Miss game when they clinched the SEC championship that year. Glenn Dorsey, like I said, won everything in 2007 that a defensive player could win, other than the Heisman Trophy. And you have a lot of the great players too, but I think he's going to be right up there. I mean, Burrow's season is virtually unmatched, but there's some things about Jayden's season too. I mean, Jayden's, if he doesn't play the bowl game, and at this moment we still don't know, but if he doesn't play the bowl game, he will have locked up the highest quarterback rating in FBS history. He would have the record at like 208, and so he's got some things that put him up there. But if I had to guess, and just right now, I would say it would be Burrow and Cannon. For most people, Burrow, Cannon, and then Jayden Daniels. But it doesn't slight him at all. I mean, but the fact that LSU didn't win even an SEC championship on his watch, probably, puts him a little bit behind those guys. But recency, usually recency bias is in your favor. In this case, it works against you. But it's all subjective. But in some ways, he did things that no one else ever did in a way that no one else ever did them, and that makes him pretty unique and pretty special as well.
Real quick, before we get further into this, to look back for a second with the jersey retirement. So in baseball, because I want to make sure we have all this right, it's Skip Bertman, number 15, Ben McDonald, 19, Eddie Furness, 36, of course. My apologies to Eddie, who's a fantastic guy. And then Todd Walker, number 12, are the jerseys that they have retired in baseball. And then another note, the statue nomination process. So just as a reason so the jersey stuff can be done in 5 years. Statues, 10 years before you can be nominated. And there's a number of other requirements in that nomination process. So just to give you a general timeline of, you're not going to see a Burrow statue or a Jayden Daniels statue for a while. But you could see their numbers retired sooner rather than later. We'll see how that all shakes out. As for how Jayden stacks up, I mean, it's tough because you've had so many players and they do so many different things. For me, a Heisman Trophy being the singular greatest award in college football, he's automatically top 3, just because of that. I think that alone does so much, and that's obviously it's tough because other positions aren't as likely to win the Heisman as playing quarterback, especially in this day and age. So someone like Tommy Casanova, like
Alan Fanico is a Hall of Famer, multiple-time All-Pro, and things of that nature.
Andrew Whitworth, left tackle, like you're not going to win the Heisman Trophy. And so maybe I'm talking myself out of that as I say these things, but it's still, it carries so much weight in that entire process. Instead of maybe putting on a specific, like he is number 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, I'd say he's a top 5 player in LSU history.
Yeah, that crossed my mind. Top 5.
That's what I would say. I mean, he's certainly up there with Burrow as the best quarterbacks in LSU history, and he has won the Heisman Trophy. So I would say a top 5 player who it's like, maybe this is an easier way to think about it. Would you put him on your Mount Rushmore of LSU football players?
I would. Yeah, I don't know how you can.
I think you'd have to. And it's so hard to compare players from different eras. I mean, Billy Cannon, you played two ways back then.
Right.
You know, he played offense, he played defense, he punted.
Right.
He threw the only touchdown pass in the 1959 Sugar Bowl, to Mickey Mangum. It's such a different era. And then Joe was a runner. But he passed for so many more yards. I think 60 touchdowns that season, but they played 15 games. And then Jayden, 50 touchdowns. And, of course, joined that group, by the way. The fifth quarterback in SEC history with 50 total touchdowns for a season. All the others won Heisman. It's like, was Jayden going to be the fifth? Yes, he was, and very, very deservedly so. But it's going to be an illustration. It's one of the things that makes sports great, right? Is that you can debate these things, and it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Everyone's opinion matters just as much as anyone else's. But he's one of the all-time greats.
I personally think that. Listen, we've all marveled at what he's been able to do this year in particular, but it makes me wonder that whether I sort of have this feeling that his legend's going to grow and grow and grow with the years as time passes, and you see other quarterbacks try to take his place, for lack of a better way to put it. And even if they're great, well, hey, they're great, but they didn't do what this guy did. Yeah. This guy rushed for 1,100 yards and passed for 3,800 and so on and so forth. So
I think I've just decided how I'm going to approach my column about this. Is that his greatest legacy at LSU may end up being the influence it has on other great quarterbacks, other talented quarterbacks coming to LSU. As Wilson mentioned, they're trying to land Bryce Underwood, who's the number one player right now for the class of 2025. And there's no guarantee that he will come in and be a Heisman winner or anything like that. That's a pretty high bar to cross. But considering, as we've said, LSU is such a quarterback desert for so many years between Matt Flynn leading LSU to the 2007 national championship and Joe Burrow, it was a lot of going through different guys and back and forth, and he's going to play, then he's going to play, then he's going to play, and so now how could a recruit not look at LSU and say, man, they've won two Heisman trophies in the last 5 years, so this is really I got to consider this place.
And when you obviously the Heisman matters to recruits, but so does where you might end up going in the NFL draft. Joe Burrow went number 1 overall. Jayden Daniels has a very real chance of being a top 10 pick.
Sure.
And that matters too.
Sure.
Because now you've got two quarterbacks who not only came in, they won the Heisman Trophy, but they were developed under two completely separate different staffs
has to be said.
And different circumstances. But both of them, when LSU's resources and when it has had good coaches, in those places to be able to help them get better. Joe Sloan and Joe Brady and Steve Insminger and Mike Dimbrock as well now here too. And they were able to get the most out of what LSU can provide. And now, Jayden, he was in the Athletic recently as the number 7 overall pick. Mel Kiper gave him a first round draft grade.
CBS
recently.
had him number 2 in a mock draft.
He came into this season as a projected mid to late day 2. And now, or at least that was his feedback at this time last year. And now he's probably a first rounder. It all depends on which teams need quarterbacks and who really wants to take him.
The Saints.
All those sorts of things.
Well, yeah, but don't you two gentlemen?
But anyway, that just goes to reinforce what Reb said.
I'm sorry, but don't you two gentlemen believe that he's when he starts to the NFL, you know how the NFL works, the scouting personnel and all that. They're like they know everything that there is to possibly know about a prospect, but. Don't you think that once he starts to go on interviews with these teams, he's going to knock those interviews out of the park and wow them that much more? There's not going to be. He will not give them a reason to slide him down on their draft boards. He's going to give them every reason to keep on bumping them up as April gets closer and closer. Don't you think?
I would think so, and it makes me think of this story that one of his former staff member at Arizona State when Jayden was there told this story one time. This was, 2022 season, early on, reporting a story about Jayden, about how there was one season there, they were going to the bowl game, and they were just sort of like fiddling around on the whiteboard doing X's and O's schematic stuff, and showed Jayden something that they had never really run before. And I'm kind of paraphrasing a lot of this because some of the details are fuzzy now. But basically that Jayden was able to take something he'd never seen before and then diagram it perfectly up on the whiteboard. He knows X's and O's, he knows football really well, and that's going to impress teams.
Mm-hmm.
His willingness has become well documented now to go in early. You know, they mentioned at the top of the Heisman broadcast Saturday night how he wanted the code to the football complex so he could go in early, even earlier in the mornings to look at film and to prepare. And that kind of, obviously looking at everything, the physical skills. He's got height, he's got arm strength, accuracy, running ability. I think he'll knock at the NFL Combine or wherever he goes. I think on pro day he'll do well at the 60-yard dash?
40-yard dash.
40-yard dash, I think he'll do okay.
I'll be interested to see if he runs it. He doesn't really have to.
I don't think he's going to do any of that stuff. Because why would you?
He does all the measurables well, but it's those inherent things. And is he the most vocal leader that you see? No, he's not. He doesn't have that same brash, Joe Namath-like personality that Joe Burrow does. But he's got a lot of things going for him too. I think he'll go very high in the draft. Will he be the number 2 overall pick? He was behind Drake May from North Carolina, according to CBS. I don't know about that, but he certainly has turned a lot of heads this season. And as Wilson said, talk about, it was like he was not expected. Let's remember that he was not really expected to stay for a second year at LSU.
Right.
And the fact that he did, boy, what a. No one's ever made a better decision probably than Jayden Daniels as a transfer.
It has certainly paid off. We will wrap it up here. We will be back here on Thursday. Obviously, when we come back on Thursday, we will discuss sort of some more things about LSU football moving forward. The transfer portal obviously is open, and players are certainly moving about back and forth in the transfer portal. Potential coaching news, which still has not come down the line one way or the other, and of course preparation for the bowl game for LSU versus Wisconsin down in Tampa on January 1st. But we will leave it there now, and we will come back on Thursday. We are brought to you every Monday and Thursday by Champion Wealth Strategies. To learn more about Champion Wealth Strategies, please go to championwealthstrategies.com and plan like a champion today. We are found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. And we are here every Monday and Thursday, as I say, on our social channels, on our YouTube channel, specifically LSU Tigers on NOLA.com YouTube channel. You can catch us live there. If you don't catch us live, you can catch us after the fact. You can catch up at any time. Please subscribe to The Advocate. To do that, you go to theadvocate.com/subscribe, whether that's our print edition or our digital edition, and stay up to date with our LSU newsletter. Everything that goes on with LSU sports, baseball, basketball, gymnastics, women's basketball, football, obviously, still as we go down the road. We're going to get here close to signing day, too, here, which is everybody's favorite. So stay up to date with our LSU newsletter. To do that, you go to theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. And again, as promised or as predicted, we're going to have some more poster pages to sell. They're for sale now. Celebrate Jayden Daniels' Heisman win with a couple of championship posters, or should I say Heisman posters. To do that, you go to store.theadvocate.com. Again, that's store.theadvocate.com. Enter the coupon code INSIDER, INSIDER, and you get 15% off your purchase. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure for sleep-deprived Wilson Alexander and Scott Rabalais, and for Amelia Cotton behind the glass, I'm Perryn Keys. This has been the LSU Sports Insider.